when I used to live in Korea, it's so funny that everywhere you go, people go, "Oh, you look like a Tom Cruise." And I'm like, no, I don't. But that's funny. First of all, I'm probably taller than Tom Cruise. And then you just also told my friend that's taller than me that he looks like Tom Cruise. Or you look like Elvis.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey there, it's Jason with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show, my friend. Thank you so much for hanging out, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. Today, top 10 reasons why I love living abroad. And what I did for this list is one of those listicle type episodes, which is always a good time to record, and I think fun to listen to because you get to hear the countdown. What's going to be the number one? We don't know, but my buddy Botik came over to hang out, and he is an American who's been living in Norway for quite some time and living abroad in different places, and I thought, well, this would be really cool to bring him in and get a couple different perspectives on what it is like to live abroad and what we love about it. And there were some things that I learned personally that surprised me about being in a place and living there as opposed to traveling through it, learning about the place and myself. And a lot of things come up in this conversation around that, and some different perspectives that he brings to the table that I hadn't thought of. It's just a very diverse conversation that touches on a lot of different things related to spending extended time abroad. So if you've spent extended time abroad or maybe lived abroad, I'm sure you're going to resonate with some of this stuff, maybe get some new perspectives there. Or if you haven't, maybe some things to consider. So plenty of delicious travel fodder for your ears today, for all ears today. Enjoy our chat. And don't forget, if you ever want to get in touch, jason@zerototravel.com is my email. If you got topic suggestions or any shows you want me to do, guests you want me to have on, just say hi. That's another thing you can do. Just shoot me an email. Now enjoy the meat of the show here. Top 10 reasons why we love living abroad, and I will see you on the other side, my friend. What's crack-a-lackin', everybody? I'm sitting here in my living room in Oslo, Norway, where I live, outside of Oslo. Or it's in Oslo, I guess, which does not mean ugly. We just found out because I'm sitting here with my buddy. First name Botik, last name Quest. We're using his alias, right? Why the mysterious alias?
Well, you know, it's a little bit of a story. I mean, I guess I can talk about it. So
good, you're not limited to time here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm allowed to talk here.
Hold your mic closer.
Okay.
First podcast.
First time on the podcast.
Yeah.
Not the first time on the microphone, but first time on the podcast. And I'm just lounging right now. Yeah, Botik. Where did we get this from? So it's a two-part story, actually. So, and it's like a gangsta name, right? You know,
yeah.
I grew up in South Florida, and in South Florida, you know, you've got a lot of friends, and especially back in the early 2000s, everybody just had a gangsta name. You know, we had bands, we had little groups and stuff like that. So one day, late high school, driving past a mall, you know, good old suburban mall, and I said, hey, I was driving with my girlfriend at the time. Hey, check out this new Botik over here. And and somehow this just got into the system there.
It just started from there. And
started from there, Botik, and then I got my other friends. Just to give a little shout out to Quap and T-Bird.
Oh yeah, I thought you were gonna say like TJ Maxx. Shout out to TJ Maxx and Bed Bath and Beyond. What's up,
Marshalls?
You guys didn't all name yourselves after shopping mall locations.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then somehow this just turned into the name, you know. So you got Botik, you've got Madonna, you've got Prince, you know.
Yeah, right in there with them.
So yeah,
Bono.
Yeah,
Dude, I'm excited to have you here because we met, I guess, a couple months ago, and I gotta say thanks to you here on the podcast because you're a musician. You started this open mic. And so you helped me conquer one of my biggest fears, which you can see why now after playing twice, getting up in front of people and playing music, which, the last one, well, we can tell stories about that. The last one was a total bomb. I forgot the lyrics like 6 times in the middle of this song. And then, your wife came up and totally saved me. She held up my crumpled pieces of paper in front of me so I could read the lyrics and get through this 2 minutes I had on stage, which I could barely do. But anyway, shout out to you for having that event and helping me find like some more community here. And I'm glad that got us connected. And it was a small world because on the podcast before we had Viking biking, right? You want to tell us about Viking biking?
Well, first of all, just about the open mic. I think that you did a fabulous job. I'm not just trying to blow some smoke up the skirt here, but that's what it's all about. I mean, it's I would much rather see people coming up and giving it a try and like progressing. Like I've already seen you progress, like over the past 2 times you played, and that's what open mic's all about, man.
I see. The thing that was most exciting was that when I came home, I'm like, wow, so much room for improvement. Well, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, well, that's what it's all about. It's about, I mean, because it's like when you go to karaoke. I'm not trying to get off topic, but I know you wanted to skip over to Viking biking and avoid the open mic topic for a second. But
I was going to circle back to
it. but I mean, this is what why we created open mic in the first place was because we wanted to give a place for everybody to come and give it a try, whether it's the first time or the 100th time, whether they're washed up Norwegian celebrity or a first time person that's been playing in the room forever.
Like the last time, the person before me who was like an American Idol contestant, but not the bad one, like the one that comes in and blows away the judges. She was the one that came on, but she's like, oh, I just happened to be in the bar and I heard this open mic thing was going on, but I work in IT, so don't judge me. And then she proceeds to like completely blow away the room, gets the standing ovation. You're like, next up, Jason. Oh boy. Yeah. And then the one before that, I had to file like this world-class juggler. I can't win. Anyway, no, it was a small world because we met at the first one that I just came to randomly, and I interviewed Curtis on the podcast before. He owns Viking Biking, which is
my dog.
It's like a tour company here where they do bike tours, and that was crazy because we went to the same high school, which is totally insane.
Crazy.
And then it turned out after I met you at the open mic, you said, "Oh yeah, I'm like basically you're like the lead guide over at Viking Biking," and which was
this is as good as it gets.
Yeah, this is what I like about Oslo. It's like, it's a big enough city where you can get lost, but it's small enough where you can still kind of find these little circles and run into the same people in different ways. You know what I mean? So it's big, but it's got a little bit of a small feel, I feel.
Yeah, I agree with that idea. It's really weird. It's hard to put your finger on it, or it's hard to really define Oslo. It's like the big city, but a small city, but actually you have everything that you need in a city.
Yeah.
It's enough city, but then you also got the nature. It's a nice balance.
Yeah.
But it's weird because you're right. You can get lost and but at the same time, you just run into the people randomly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We've hung out a few times since the open mic. I mean, I guess the last time we hung out, we did we would like to call hobo style, right? Had some beers in the park.
Oh yeah.
And we were just chatting, and then we came up with this idea. I was like, man, you would be the perfect person to record this podcast with because you've been living abroad for a while, and I wanted to ask you a couple questions about that. But today we're going to be doing our top 5 things we love about living abroad. We're going to count it. We've actually ranked these, which is always a challenge, from number 5 to number 1. So we're going to go back and forth, and we'll count down from our 5 to our number 1, and that's how this show is going to work. So I'm excited to get to the list and jam on this. This could be really interesting because you have been. How long have you been living abroad?
I am moving up on about my 10th anniversary.
Okay,
right
wow.
now.
A decade out of the U.S., which is your home country.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. I mean, does it seem like it's been a decade?
It's like Oslo. It seems it's big, but it's small. It's hard to define. You know what I mean? I did not by any means expect to be outside this long, but I didn't really have a plan either. So it's just, I don't know, just 10 summers, 10 winters. Keep on going around.
Well, I mean, it sounds like it was a mixture of a lot of cool things. I mean, we'll have to do something else, I think, to get a bit more into your story, because it sounds like at one point there was some kind of rock band that was touring around Korea, and then there was some crazy hitchhiking going on, and
there was a lot of stuff. It feels a lot longer than 10 years. Actually, it's like 40 years jammed into 10 years.
What countries have you been living in the last 10 years?
In the past 10 years, it all started with Korea. Yeah, that was the got a job in South Korea during the economical crisis of 2009.
Yeah.
Just sent me to Korea.
That was a good idea. You're like, oh, the economy sucks here. I'm going to Korea.
Yeah, well, it was basically I applied for. I couldn't get a job. I just graduated from my bachelor's degree, and I couldn't even get a job at the freaking Waffle House. So I was just like, okay, Japan, Thailand, Korea. Here's 3 applications. Let's see what happens.
Did you literally apply for a job at the Waffle House?
Yeah,
because I love that place.
Yeah, I tried a job at the Waffle House, the Pancake House. I mean, the sad story.
All the houses. Man, that was a crazy time.
Yeah. So, anyways, I'm going off tangent now, but just to give you the list, we can go into it deeper later. You know, Korea, and then after that, moved to Germany. And from Germany, it was UK, Norway, back to Germany, back to Norway. Then I moved to Italy, and then I moved back to Norway.
Norway kept bringing you back.
Yeah, I've tried to move away from Norway many times, and it just keeps dragging me back in.
And your wife is Lithuanian.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So why Norway?
Yeah, it's
I mean, it's not that you could be living in one of the much cheaper countries by the beach somewhere. Mm-hmm. Cold winters here, dark, very expensive.
Yep. It's a question that I ask myself many times. But I mean, of course, it's like we're going to get into our list. There's a lot of great reasons to live in Norway, despite the cold winters and despite, all this kind of stuff. I mean, it just kind of happened to end up here.
Yeah.
Being a hobo-esque kind of person, maybe a modern day hobo, this idea of kind of, hopping from job to job, opportunity to opportunity, and just kind of landed here. And when I first came to Norway, I really fell in love with the nature. Okay, I don't want to give away too much before we get into the list, but I really did fall in love with the nature immediately, and also just kind of the nature and like the ability to just kind of get around and get out, and that
the proximity, like
you just
specifically in Oslo.
Yeah, specifically in Oslo. I mean, you can just like live in a city and.
Well, this is something you studied, and that was part. We talked about that when we were hanging out last time. This was really sort of intertwined with your work, your academic work, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I came here to Norway to do my master's degree in transcultural European outdoor studies. Very fancy name.
Sounds awesome.
It's pretty. It was the best thing ever. It was.
In a nutshell, explain what that is.
Okay, you got to explain this. You got to kind of go backwards throughout the name. So, transcultural European outdoor studies. So we're studying the outdoors in Europe transculturally. So across the different cultures throughout Europe. So it's like a comparative study. So basically, we're learning about the education systems. We're learning about like human nature relations and all the things that go into that. It's very deep. It's like sustainability, city planning, urban planning, like I said, education, the health and wellness, all this kind of stuff, and how it's just you can kind of, it's for different people. They choose different things to study within this. But I ended up studying friluftsliv, which is actually the great cornerstone of Norwegian culture, I would say, of getting outside.
Yeah, say the word again and explain what that is.
Friluftsliv. So friluftsliv, if you haven't heard of this before, it's actually 3 words. It's a Norwegian word. Friluftsliv, 3 words smashed together into one word. It means free in English, liv, life. Sorry, now I got it. Free loose leaf. It means the free air life. The free air life. And what does that mean? That means a lot of things to Norwegian culture, but it has a lot to do with like getting outside, being with the nature, relating with the nature. If you look into more modern interpretations of friluftsliv and things like deep ecology, Arnes, these types of things, you're going to hear a lot about kind of communing with nature, identifying with nature, and therefore like learning to care for nature, because like as you would care for yourself, you know what I mean?
Right.
So that's a little bit of what I'm into. Some people, and also the tourism side of things and stuff, but that's people take this friluftsliv in a lot of different perspectives. What it looks like in reality, on a daily basis for the average Norwegian person might mean you have a cabin that you go out into the woods on the weekends or during holidays to relax and kind of get back out into the nature, to go fishing, to knit and look out the window at a mountain, or play your piano, or just be in the nature. During weekends, a lot of people go out skiing in the summer, in the winter time, running, biking in the forest, or, swimming in the water. It's just about being in the nature. It's not necessarily sports. It's just being in this relationship.
It's a beautiful thing. I think it's like it's a real core part of the identity of Norwegians here. And I think, now that you're talking about it, to me, there's like a kind of relaxed vibe here, You come from Florida, so, you go to certain beach towns and you just feel like, oh, you're in a beach town and it's just like relaxed. People are pedaling around and giant cruiser bikes and their flip-flops, and there's just like this relaxed vibe. And I feel like that, even in the city here, that's a part of Norwegian culture. To me, it feels a bit more relaxed in that way. Maybe that's the connection with nature. I'm just speculating, but...
I know
part of that.
I know exactly what you mean, and I think that was part of what initially sucked me into Norway too. It was this access to nature, but also the kind of relaxed vibe that you just immediately kind of feel when you get here. Or when you're walking, I mean, of course, we could go deep into that, and there's a lot of contradictions in that idea, and we could talk about different aspects of Norwegian culture. But in general, I think on a surface level, it's place that's designed for people to have that kind of vacation vibe, but all the time.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's a very idealistic and like kind of romantic vision, but there is something to it. Yeah.
Listen, man, it's always nice to live in a place that people travel to, because that's a nice place to go. So if you live in a place where other people are traveling just to see it, that's never a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of frames up our conversation because, and we could keep diving deep on your story, which I think we're going to have to do at some point, because I'm sure some people listening, their ears perked up when you told them what you study. It's like, wow, what? To study like nature and culture and different countries around. That's crazy. What a crazy program. Like there's all these, I don't know, every time I kind of have these conversations, like when you told me about that, I was like, wow, that's incredible. Like, how do you even find that as an academic pursuit?
That's a whole story.
Really cool thing. Yeah. So that's a whole story. But for you've lived in different countries, a lot of different countries around the world. You just can't kind of mention the list. For me, most of my expat experience is in Norway. I mean, I've traveled and spent a lot of time abroad, but as far as living abroad, Norway's the place for me. I've lived here for officially almost 4 years now, and I was coming here for extended periods of time before that, just to kind of give everybody an idea of where these lists are coming from. And also, I think my list might differ a little. We don't know each other's lists, by the way. That's another fun thing. So we're going to kind of go back and forth and riff, see if we have anything matching up here. I have kids. I have 2 kids. You don't have any kids, so like that might change some things, not that you know of. Right off the bat, before we get into this list, man, I think we should take friends and family off the table, and we should just have that discussion really quick, because obviously friends and family is going to be one of the challenges. And I guess this would be on the challenging things side of living abroad. So maybe I shouldn't have mentioned that, because this doesn't really tie in at all with what we're talking about. But this is
spoiler alert.
This is spoiler alert. We're going to talk about in the next show. But friends and family as a separate category, I think, is something that's challenging. We're going to get into challenging in another. Well, no, this is good. I can tease that out, because we're going to do another episode. It's going to be our top 5 most challenging things living abroad. See? It all works out in the end.
I think probably while we're talking about this, we're going to tease some things anyways.
I think so. Why we were talking a little bit before we started recording. Why do you have a problem with the term expat?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good. I'm glad you brought that up. Expat. Expatriate. This whole idea. I think at the root of it, I don't necessarily have a problem with the word, but I have a problem a lot with like the way that the word is used. Because what really defines... I remember I was looking up the definition, but I don't have it in front of me right now. Like, what really defines like an expat, and what are we using this in? And I always wonder a lot why people like from United States or the UK or Australia, when we go abroad, we're considered expats. But everybody else, when's the last time we ever heard about a Somali expats, or Afghani expats? It's like when this term is used a lot in the media, it's always it's a very like polarizing term.
You're categorizing people.
Yeah, I mean, I understand as especially as like a business term or a term that's used in like advertising and stuff like that. It's like there's certain expat services, like, we're going to help you find a house, like we're going to help you with your taxes, like expat tax services and these types of things. So I understand it from like a marketing perspective, but I think I don't usually like the term I don't usually like to use the term to refer. I never use the term to refer to myself as an expat, because I feel much more just like an immigrant. And that'll go. That'll come up a little later in our list of things that we're dealing with. But yeah, that's generally it. So I usually just refer to myself as an immigrant, and it's also really important, I think. Sorry, I'll just like say one more thing. I think it's really important because, especially when you look back at, for example, where we come from in the United States and the way that people talk about immigrants, it has this negative tone to it, negative, like, I want to say connotations to it. Whereas when we talk about expats, it really has this like really positive thing. And I think that both things are kind of like should be kind of neutral terms, but the way that we use it in society is like quite polarizing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. And I think living abroad that's the title of this list. So I think that's kind of all encompassing. Yeah. Right. It's like
we all living abroad.
Right. I mean, there's people from all over the world living here. And I was actually surprised in Oslo specifically. I mean, I just didn't know much about the city and how many people live here from all over the world and have settled in Norway. It's it's been such a cultural experience on many different levels, and one that was not expected when I came here. I just think, Norway, you think in Norwegians, but you're meeting people from all over the world. It's a very much a melting pot city.
Totally.
In many ways. All right, let's get into our list. Top 5 things we love about living abroad. Again, we don't know what's on each other's lists. We're just going to go back and forth from 5 to 1, and I'm going to let you take it, my man.
Okay, we're on
Botik, number 5.
And I'm just one question about the rules of the game here. So if we match up on something, we should just bounce back.
Yeah, we'll figure it out as we go.
Okay. All right, top 5. It's really hard to categorize this list. Top 5. So we're talking about. Well, I'm just gonna go from the top.
All right. So number 1 will be the thing you love the absolute most about living abroad. Ooh, number 5 will be something you love, but you're kind of ranking them. Okay. Am I putting you on the spot now?
No, it's okay. My list is very fluid. I'm just gonna go for it. We'll make
go
it work.
For it.
So, top 5 things that I love. Number 5, and this is number 5 because I think that it's a kind of a silly one, and it's kind of a luxurious one. It's not really that important of one, but
perfect.
And it can have really two sides to the issue. But and this was my wild card. This is the foreigner card. So and this is
interesting.
And this is kind of this. And I'm almost a bit feel dirty kind of talking about this because.
Let it all out, man.
Yeah.
This is the place to air your dirty laundry
because everybody will hear it. And
there's literally dirty laundry airing around my apartment too, as we say this. So,
what kind of detergent do you use? It smells lovely.
The foreigner card.
The foreigner card, and I would say this is a point of privilege, and this is definitely something that I don't use too often, but in general, it's just kind of funny. Okay, foreigner card. What do we mean by this? It's just like. I'm a foreigner. So it can be played in a lot of ways. It's always being a foreigner in any country that you're in is always an interesting point of conversation. It's a conversation starter.
True.
Where are you from? We always got something to talk about. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And that plays out differently in different countries too. And I think that it's not really something that you use so much to your advantage most of the time, and sometimes can definitely pose a large disadvantage. But looking for the variety being the spice of life, you get a lot of funny reactions from people sometimes. So on the positive side, for example, it's just like when I used to live in Korea, it's so funny that everywhere you go, people go, "Oh, you look like a Tom Cruise," and I'm like, no, I don't, but that's funny. First of all, I'm probably taller than Tom Cruise. And then you just also told my friend that's taller than me that he looks like Tom Cruise. Or you look like Elvis. And like you'll get people just coming up to you on the train saying these funny things. So it's just a funny thing. And then you can also use it and not use it, but it also plays out in some other ways. Like once in a while, you can just be a tourist,
Yeah. Right.
And people just think you're a tourist, and you can
blend in as a tourist. Which is a different experience for that day.
Yeah, right? For that day, yeah. Yeah.
Well, we went out last time. People thought we were tourists. I think hanging out at the bar, they were like, we don't like these tourists. There's like this one guy. We're like, all right, we're not tourists. But no, that's true, man. I hadn't thought about that. It's a great number 5. I think, living in Norway, I mean, one example of that is Norwegians are very polite, and I've talked about this in the podcast before. Their version of polite is kind of like not bothering each other on the streets, part of their culture. They don't really want to kind of have those conversations, where us in the U.S., we're pretty chatty with, random strangers and whoever, generally speaking. So the foreigner card, you get to play the foreigner card sometimes when you're out and about. You can go up and just start talking to a Norwegian. If a Norwegian did that to another Norwegian, they'd be like, why are you talking to me? Like, this is not part of our... But when they realize that you are not Norwegian, and everybody likes, a friendly person or a smile or whatever, you can kind of make these, I don't want to say screw ups. You could just do things outside of the cultural norms.
Yeah.
And you can get away with it and even be almost rewarded for it in some ways. Just in that example, it could be just rewarded by an interaction or a conversation that maybe a Norwegian wouldn't have done, because they won't turn around and talk to the person in line behind you, but you will because you're American, and then they're going to realize that, and then it's okay for them to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. It's true, and that's great sometimes too, because I mean we are foreigners, and actually, I don't really want to blend in. You know what I mean? So it's not that I want to purposely stand out, but I'm glad that...
So part of the foreigner card is that, you get to be a little special in some way.
Or you get to, you're just being yourself, but it can work out to be special. I mean, man, I tell you what, sometimes I wish that I would have stayed in Korea a little bit longer, because I think at this point
you would have been a rock star.
That
Tom Cruise.
It's always in the backup plan. Yeah, but then of course now, and then of course, if something goes wrong, like you didn't understand the rules, like on the bus,
you get away with it
sometimes. Not always. They've been cracking down more.
Right. You just all of a sudden you're like, oh, I didn't understand I was supposed to buy a ticket before.
It's funny stuff. It's like stuff that you would, I feel like, you could make a whole Adam Sandler movie out of,
for sure.
Playing the foreigner card. I can see it, the old cheesy 90s Adam Sandler movie, but so I mean, that's why I say it's kind of a light one.
Adam Sandler in foreigner card.
Yeah. It's not something I like to use a lot, but, I don't think there's really so many opportunities to use it, but it's something that you recognize and that exists.
I mean, I think all travelers know of this as well. I mean, you might show up in a place, you start asking for directions. People know you're not from there. They take you into their home. All kinds of awesome stuff happens because you're not from there. And when you're living abroad, you're always not from there, right? So you're kind of always having that foreigner card, as we call it. So That's really interesting, man. I love that. We could do a deep dive on that and talk about that probably for another hour. We should probably move on.
Oh, just one thing I want to say about the foreigner card though is that because I always got to make sure I check myself.
For sure.
Is that of course I fully recognize that, and I don't like to abuse that. And you got to fully recognize too that the foreigner card works differently depending on where you're from. So
of course,
for a lot of people, the foreigner card is not a good card to have.
No, not at all. It's the worst card in the deck.
It's the worst card in the deck. So that's why I always like to draw attention to that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because I always kind of take those things as a given. Like I feel like people are assuming we're coming at this list from our perspectives. We only have these one perspectives, and they're very fortunate, privileged perspectives. Like I was just talking about this the other day, actually, when I was recording for the podcast, saying how, I get to be here. I'm living abroad by choice. I came here because I married a Norwegian. We decided to settle down here. I might be sitting, there was times in Norwegian class where I'm sitting next to people who, they had to escape their war-torn country. There's all these crazy scenarios of why people have to leave their countries. They don't want to leave their homes. They don't want to leave their friends and family behind. Exactly. So, I think hopefully people listening understand we're coming from that perspective of compassion and empathy, and we're speaking with our sort of limited experience here, being two like privileged white guys who get to be hanging out here, living here by choice. Basically.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're listening to the podcast right now and you're like, this guy Botik sounds like a dick, wait for it. I don't know if I can say that.
You can say whatever you want. Okay. My number 5, thank you
it.
for bringing that up. That was important.
That's what I'm here for.
Food. Food.
Oh, food.
Because
interesting.
We are sitting here eating lefser right now. Med kanelcreme. They're like, I won't tell anybody because there's butter in it and they're mostly vegan. Oh, wait, I just told everybody. Sorry. How do you not eat butter?
Wait for my presidential run in 2035. You're going to find this.
The butter here is so good. Anyway, no, just I think living abroad, you get to dive deep on food. You get different food experiences that, you know how it is when you go to visit a country for, say, a week or two or even a month. A big part of travel for me is food, and you're always trying to squeeze in as many good meals as you can and try to, try this thing and that thing and all the things that make the country what it is, culinarily speaking. I don't even know if that's a word, but I'm just making it one. But when you live in a place, you get so much more experience on the food side. So even just going up to visit my in-laws and having my mother-in-law who cooks this crazy, awesome, like farm food, meat and potatoes stuff is just like so delicious and it's local. And if we have moose, it's coming from somewhere in the neighborhood, like either a neighbor got that moose and, was sold to like different people that live there. It's just hyper local and super good. So I think when you live in a place for a period of time, anywhere really, you get to know, this if you're living in your hometown, you're listening right now, like where to go for this sandwich or this, Nepalese meal or this Indian place because the best places. So you find the best places, but then you get to get under the skin of the country by understanding more about it through their food because you just have more food experiences with it because you have more time.
Yeah, and on that note, there's just so much you can learn from the food too. Once you start getting into it, if you stick of course you might learn a lot from the food if you're just there for a couple of days, but especially if you travel different regions of the countries or if you like live in different regions throughout like a same country, you see real how people are interacting with the food that grows in their local community. And then you start to find out things that I find this really interesting is you start to find out things like, oh, they eat the same food in this southern part of Germany and the northern part of Austria and the northeastern part of Switzerland. So you start to draw these conclusions that are like actually, things like nations maybe don't matter as much as regions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like people are so connected by food. Food is such an important thing, but people in the south of a country might eat totally different food in like the north of a country. You go to like India, you'll see stuff like this, like huge countries, China.
Even in Norway, they have different like Christmas traditions, meals in different parts of Norway.
And you might find more similarities between the south of Norway and like the west of Sweden than you might find in like the south of Norway and the north of Norway or something like that. So you learn
that's true.
Food is a big part, especially local food, is like such a big part of regionalism. It says a lot about that area rather than even necessarily that nation.
I like the way you said that because it's like food is borderless. Right?
Exactly. Exactly. And it sounds so strange, but like recognizing that through like, you know, living abroad and stuff like that.
Uniting people in a different way.
It like changes. For me, that's really changed my perspective. I mean, I was never a big fan of nationalism anyways, but it really strikes a good argument if you want to contest something like nationalism or something like that. When you see that, we eat potatoes here. We eat fried potato pancakes here, and we eat fried potato pancakes there. There's only this border in between us, you know. You go to the Middle East, everybody's eating hummus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody's eating the same food. It's incredible. So and it's weird because food is this thing that's so close to everybody's hearts and families and like the essence of stuff.
Yeah.
And I wish sometimes people would focus a little bit more on food.
Yeah.
And what that tells us about
right.
the cultures that we're existing in instead of the borders. Yeah.
I love that. That's great. Yeah. Food knows no nationalities, no borders.
In many cases, yeah.
Love the salmon here too. Wow. So Norwegian salmon's known worldwide, so you get to get spoiled on that. All right. You want to go to your number 4?
Yeah. Well, you know what? This is kind of going kind of along. This is nice, you know, that we've kind of already been talking about this anyways, going from the food is generally just the perspective that living abroad gives you. This is a big thing for me. Perspective. I know it's a bit more philosophical or existential kind of thing. But when it comes to perspective, I mean, and I already touched on this a little bit before when we were talking about like being an expat and stuff like that. But, you know, in general, the more places you live, the more homes that you kind of have. Like this process of immigrating all the time, living in one place, having to pack up all your things, having to, you know, figure out how to move somewhere before you've ever even been there before. You start to really understand this process, and going through that again and again and again and again gives you this very diverse perspective. At least gives me a very diverse perspective about like what just a lot of people around the world are dealing with. You know, having to pack your things and go to new places that you've never been before. You don't know the language. You don't know all these things. You don't know how the system works, and you're just like thrown in there. And then you got to figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's perspective. And it's weird because, you know, every time you go to a new place, it's like same planet, different world.
Yeah.
Different worlds. And you call your family up on the phone, like, oh, how's it going on over there? But they really, it's hard to just explain the experience. You know what I mean?
Right.
Of being in these new places and going deeper into some of them than others and taking some things with you and bringing it to the next and becoming kind of this, sounds cheesy, but kind of this person of the world rather than this person of just United States.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You always have that to bounce off of. It's like constantly bouncing back and forth. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So I think perspective is a really good thing.
Yeah.
I've gotten out of this.
Yeah, man. That's great because guess what? My number 4.
Dun, dun, dun.
Not in the same way. I didn't label it the same way, but it's essentially perspective.
Yeah.
Same thing. I mean, what I wrote down is, I mean, there were a couple things I wrote down. One is getting to see your home country in a new light. Mm-hmm. That's perspective. And getting to see yourself in a new way because you're in a place or you've been moving around or living in different countries that it makes you question, like you said, your identity, and not in a bad way, not like it's easy to identify as I'm an American or I'm this or that, but then you take something like as big as your home country or where you grew up away and you put yourself somewhere else. It gives you perspective on the world. It gives you perspective on what it must be like when we're talking about people before who we get to come here by choice. What about somebody that has to come here and they have to figure it out, figure out how to exist in a new country because they had to leave their own country because of war or whatever. You cannot be in their shoes, but at least gives you a little bit more of an idea what it's like to relocate. I mean, you have a little more understanding when you're moving around and kind of getting outside of where you're from and putting yourself in new places and situations. I think it totally shatters part of your identity. And then you have to really understand, it just helps you to understand yourself in a different way, I feel, certainly being in Norway for me, that's been a big thing for me, up and down, struggles and also good things. But I had such love for Colorado where I was living. And then I liked it here, but I didn't love it here in the beginning. And I really had to figure out, all right, I can't, it was like a philosophical thing too. I can't tie my happiness to a physical location. My happiness has to be within me and I have to create it, whether I have friends and family here or not, whether I speak the language or not, whether I miss, going to the local brew pub that I love in Boulder or not. I'm still waking up in this place. And I'm here, and I don't know what that means. I don't have the association with my home country, my friends and family there. Trying to figure all that out, that whole process for me was a real good couple years of just learning about myself and trying to slow down and understand how to exist in a new place. And then through that, getting all kinds of different perspectives on along the way for myself, but also just in the world. Yeah, so it's perspective, basically.
Yeah, and it's weird because once you kind of get started with that, it's like opening up Pandora's box.
Yeah,
in a way. I mean, not in any way to diminish the idea that many people live in just one place forever, and I'm sure that leads to a whole other world of perspective. But
we're talking about from our experience.
Yeah. But there is really something that I've gotten out of. It's kind of like reflection, through this perspective that you get from reflecting, and then it's as if every place you live, because it is such a different world, at least every place I've lived, because it is very different worlds, it's like looking in kind of different mirrors. And you have all these mirrors that kind of bounce all the light off of. And at some point, it all just kind of, in many ways, becomes one big soup of ideas.
Right.
And it's like you said, but it's kind of wild because sometimes you wake up and you're just like, what, am I here? Wait, where am I? I'm in Norway still.
Yeah. I think it can certainly accelerate perspective change, right?
Mm-hmm. A lot of change going on. I think that's the thing. It's like you're dealing with a lot of change. I mean, going back to just the idea of what it's like to go through something very real, but something that a lot of people don't experience, is like going through something like a very bureaucratic immigration process into a country. Getting your papers together, getting your IDs, getting everything notarized and apostilled, and all this kind of stuff that I think a lot of people who are probably listening to this might relate to. And maybe if you haven't done that yet, maybe you're thinking about it. It's something to be prepared for, and it also sucks a lot to do all that stuff. Yeah. And then the more you move, or even if you stay in a country for a long time, you have to keep doing it again and again. Sometimes it gives you a lot of perspective on what that kind of process is like. And bringing it back even a little bit more, we were talking about people that maybe are not as privileged with their passports. U.S. passport's still pretty decent.
Yeah.
It's not an EU passport, but it's still a pretty decent passport. But people that have even less privileged passports, you get like a tiny inkling,
right?
Because that process can suck so much, anyways. Like it can be. Now we're kind of getting into challenges.
You could imagine what you're doing that against your will, or like, not your first choice type of thing.
Yeah, or just like, you know how much the uncertainty of like, will I get to live here or not? Like, how will this like work out? Oh, maybe I have to move back to this state, or where am I going to go? Do I got to go over the border to renew my visa? Blah, blah, blah. All this kind of stuff that you deal with when you're traveling around or living around. And then you think, wow, and I actually am having an easier time than a lot of other people.
Right.
So that's the benefit.
Puts it in perspective.
Yeah, bringing it back to the positive stuff, the stuff that I really like. It's like you garner this perspective that is really valuable and can actually. I mean, when I think about like my studies and my research and like different things and the way that I interact with tourists and stuff like this, when I'm doing tours and teaching and stuff like this, like this is very ingrained into that. Like, what do you think about it from this perspective?
Yeah.
And how is it for these people? It's like putting yourself in the other shoes and using your experience to kind of do that. And you'll never truly know, but you got like a feeling that you've kind of gained.
Yeah, you can never know like who you would be if you spent the last 10 years in the States, for example. But I mean, I think unequivocally, I guess we could say that the perspectives we've gotten from living abroad are different than we could have gotten at home personally.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for you, but
I think
for
it's, sure.
And what that teaches you, and for me, one of the biggest things that perspective has taught me from like a personal perspective, I guess, is it's just amplified my gratitude in a way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, I guess like going through that process of, good question, being, trying to let go of a place that I was living before and exist in a new place that's not your home country. And then you really breaking it down to, when you go through going through tough times, everything you can easily think when you're home, oh, like living abroad, like say you're in this crappy job and you want to go live abroad and that's like your dream. It's just easy to kind of glorify that, right? But then the realities of the daily life can catch up to you, whether it's bureaucracy or whatever. I mean, when you live in a place, you're experiencing your daily life, and that means there's going to be ups and downs. It was really hard to get used to being in a place where I had no community, and we're getting into challenges here, I guess. So we'll try not to go too deep down here.
Over.
But yeah, just kind of practicing gratitude every day for the things that I did have, and not focusing on the things that might have been missing for me at the time. Certain days, like I'm sure, like you wake up and you just like, this happened to me a couple weeks ago. I'm like, man, I just want to like be in the States right now and just jump in my car and drive to a diner and have breakfast at the counter and just do this like total US thing.
Yeah.
Totally. So anyway, that's different than kind of what we're talking about with perspective, like sort of grand perspectives on the world, on life and everything like that. But all that ties in with your kind of inner world. Too,
yeah. I
right?
mean, this is this stuff that you don't really get necessarily. Well, it's weird. This is the kind of saying something like, perspective as a benefit of, traveling or living abroad. It is stuff that they do sell in, for example, like travel magazines.
Yeah.
Though. This is stuff that they sell in study abroad magazines.
Right.
They are selling this stuff. They're saying,
that's true.
Study abroad for a semester in Florence, and you're gonna get a whole new perspective on life. But I think a lot of I can remember thinking about what that meant a long time ago, say in high school, like, oh, I want to go study abroad.
It's like a generic representation versus the reality of perspective change.
You're actually, if you're taking that seriously, and you spend a little time with it, then you might get a bit more than you actually bargained for.
Yeah. Well said. All right, so we both got number 4, perspective. Let's move on to number 3. I know your phone was slowly dying. So, do you want to share your number 3, or you want me to take it?
Go for it. You
want me to take it? Okay.
Yeah.
This is this is sort of a travel based one for me. I spent many years, like decade plus, living and working around the United States. So I was basically on a giant road trip around the United States for 10 years. With overseas trips in between and stuff like that. So I was fortunate enough. I love road trips. I got to see and spend time in so many places around the United States. It's insane, which was a beautiful thing. I got to really know my home country in a different, unique way, just living on the road in it. Living over here in Europe, I have proximity to new places to explore that are within my reach pretty easily. So I would say one of my number 3 thing that I love about living abroad is just being in a new region and having the ability to easily travel to new places that you've never been before. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I don't need to go too deep on that, but it's so easy to get around Europe. This is a whole continent that I've explored, in my travel life, but I've only scratched the surface. There's so many places in Europe I want to go see, and it's really cool that we can just, like, my wife's going to Latvia this weekend. She's just getting on a flight and going to Latvia. Like, that's a hassle from the States. But here, you can just hop on a direct flight to Latvia and spend a weekend there. It's just exciting to me. Like, I cannot wait to kind of get out and explore more of Europe. I'm saying I cannot wait because it's something I've been doing since I've been here. But I think as my kids get a little older and older, it's just going to be easier to kind of bring them along, or I'm going to say leave them behind. But when they're not so small, it's not so hard to have them on your own for a period of time. So that's going to increase more and more for me for my personal situation. So yeah, I just love being on a new continent and having new exciting things to explore.
Hell yeah, man. Believe it or not, my number 3 is also quite similar. I listed it as place, but yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, ability to travel to many different places easily. And I mean,
right.
Yeah, I mean, but
right on the same page here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I totally agree. And for me, it was kind of similar before I ever came, I feel like my life has been this kind of progress into different transition into different types of traveling and like getting about, because when I was in the United States, I remember when I first got my car, 16, got a car, 17, whatever, and it was just like, all right, like the world is my oyster, like right. I can go out and just.
What was the soundtrack? Just really quick side note.
Soundtrack?
If you're just like immediate association with like for me being 16 driving a car, I'm thinking about like Cypress Hill and Violent Femmes.
Oh, dude. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I was listening to all that, but I literally had, if I was going to tell you, probably I had
Called Quest.
I had a GTI red 1996 Volkswagen GTI.
Sounds very Florida.
Driving around, delivering pizza, listening. Definitely had, if I had 3 CDs in there, I was definitely had my, I did have a really awesome Violent Femmes acoustic tour, Viva, Wisconsin.
Nice.
Which was always in there. And I gotta have the Fish. I had always jamming the Fish.
Yeah, you had the
and
Fish.
A variety of other jam bands. And then, of course, some classic rock, I had that big CD case,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You got to have the CD case, yeah.
Like the one that
CD
weighed
lot.
like...
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like, I had like 100-page CD case, all burned CDs, and just like, wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, total side note.
But anyways, so the point was, so I traveled a lot in the United States once I got this car. And I really wanted to see the United States before I went anywhere else. It was weird because even though at that time didn't really travel anywhere, I had this weird sense of kind of reverse perspective. Like going back to the last thing we were talking about, I was like, I really want to see the U.S. before I go anywhere else, because then I have that perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I
think it's an important point.
It was really, like I remember talking.
See some of your home country.
Yeah, I remember like especially the first, like, because I did not leave the United. Well, other than a few like family like trips, going on a cruise and stuff. I did not personally leave the United States until I was about 23. So yeah, about 11 years ago. That was like the first time when I went to spend some months in Ecuador, and but just cruising around in the car, and you could see so much. But nowadays, living in Europe, it's just like, it's also so awesome because first of all, you don't need a car.
Yeah, right.
And you just
so compact.
Yeah, it's gonna I don't want to give away too much from my next one.
Okay. All right. We can leave it at that.
We'll segue into that. Yeah.
We can leave it at that.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to move into the next one since you were kind of going there?
I might just flow into that because it kind of goes with what I'm saying right now. So
keep it going. I'm gonna go get the coffee thermos. We're totally hopped up on coffee and sugar, by the way, in case you haven't noticed. So go ahead.
Yeah, going into to add, let's say, to what you're saying about travel. I love traveling in Europe. especially if I compare it to the way that I used to travel in the United States. So don't get me wrong, I love the road trip. I love, hopping in the car with the
Pulling
CDs
over to get a big gulp.
Nothing compares, but on the
compares.
this is the Prince song.
That's true.
We just found this out last year.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So yeah, traveling around the United States was always great, but here in Europe, like my key word for this topic is mobility.
Okay.
Mobility is so key here. Not just from a travel perspective. Like let's start from the top. Okay. Segueing from ability to travel into more of a micro mobility setting. Okay. So starting from the top, segueing from an idea of where to travel around. I mean, man, since I've been in Europe, like 8 years. Since I've been in Europe, it's like you see so much. You're just like, I'm going to take the train from Germany to England.
Yeah.
And in between, I'm going to go through Belgium and Netherlands.
Right. You're hitting like multiple totally different cultures along the way.
You just end up in countries you were like, I didn't even think about it, you know? And you can take, like, I've literally taken public transportation, like a combination of like hitchhiking and public transportation from like the north of Scotland to like the south of Croatia over to like Istanbul.
You're seeing all kinds of stuff along the way.
Yeah, just along the way. And you can like it's really easy to slow travel here. Like, you can hitchhike, you can bike. I've done like some pretty nice bike trips. You can just like, there's so many ways to get around. There's so many opportunities for mobility. Yeah. Which for me, I really love because at the end of the day, although I love driving around in a car and it can be fun sometimes, although I do get a bit car sick. It's not the best way to travel. It's not the most efficient way to travel. No. And here you can do it. Well,
the public transportation here is
and that was the next thing I was going to talk about mobility. It's just like living, especially here in Oslo, but also when I used to live in South Korea and Germany and all these places. It's just like the public transportation is awesome. Yeah, overall,
it's incredible.
I come from Palm Beach County. We got awarded, at least back in the day, the worst public transportation in America. Sorry, Palm Beach County. I love you.
No, don't apologize. It's their own fault. I don't know. It's a shame. It's always like kind of breaking my heart that as America evolved as a country, they didn't prioritize these types of things. You get on trains here in Europe and you get out in the middle of the city center of another place, and there you are. And we're not saying, oh, this is all perfect and everything back in our home country sucks or whatever, but I mean, it's dramatically better as far as getting around, public transportation, the ability to, of course, that mean we can't control, and the States are so big, you're going through different subcultures in a different way, but you're still always in the same country. So there's that homogeny, I guess, where you go on across Route 80 across the United States. How many Walmarts and shopping centers are you going to pass with Walmart, Target, and all this stuff, So you have to kind of get off of that and get into some of the different towns, I think, to like get into what America is. Because you can put yourself in certain places in America. If like they put a blindfold on you and helicoptered you into a Walmart shopping center, if it wasn't idea. Like, if there weren't like desert mountains around, or something that you could look at, it's like they was just flat, you would have probably no idea where you were. You could be in like 30 different states.
Oh, yeah.
You can't really say the same about Europe.
Yeah. Well, it's
of course, but I guess the homogeny is something I like, that it doesn't seem as homogenous here in that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, of course, it has one.
They have their IKEAs, and
it's a funny topic because it does have a lot to do, of course, with the way history. Yeah. Right. But we can't. But it's not history like how cities were built, and if you go to Germany, what a funny place to go on a bike ride. Yeah. Every 3 kilometers, there's a new tiny village. And there's literally bike paths like connecting all of these villages.
I know, I'm dying to do. Have you done that? Have you biked through Germany?
Yeah.
I've heard such great things.
I mean, and it's just, but that's how those towns have existed for centuries.
Right.
So America, United States is very new.
Yeah. But that's what bothers me, that they didn't really plan for public transportation in that sort of way.
Oh, and
you know?
there's a reason for that.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure that's another deep dive, I guess. But
There's definitely financial reasons why they didn't decide to, because we
just keep it on the things we love, I guess. So let's keep it. I started going into this negative direction. Mobility here in Europe.
What we should do though is we should give really for people who are listening at home, a perspective really on like what it looks like to be mobile just here in a place like Oslo.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Break it down.
Yeah, I'll break it down because
preach it, my man.
Let me give you an idea. This is what I tell, because this is what we talk about a lot when I have tours. How incredible is this? When they decided to start designing the public transportation system, the T-bane as they call it here in Norway, they designed it. They first started designing it back in like the late 1800s. During the Industrial Revolution, when it was at like full peak here in Norway. It was like a little later, and it was getting really smoggy and industrial in the downtown area. So they decided to create a train line.
Yeah,
basically the first long train line up to Frognerseteren and for Holmenkollen. So people that don't know what we're talking about right now, Holmenkollen is this very high place. It's one of the highest places in Oslo. They basically created a train line to get people out to the fresh air and to get people out into the nature. Nowadays, how they've created the public transportation system here is literally at the end of every metro line, at the end of every T-bane train line, it drops you off at a natural area. I mean, it is a priority of this community here to get people out into the nature. Now, of course, that's not the only reason why people use it. That's not why you use it. I mean, some people do use it on a daily basis to get out to the nature.
I mean, I not on a daily basis, but we use it to go to like Sognsvann, for example.
Yeah, use it to get out to the lake.
Take the T-bane to the last stop at Sognsvann, get to the lake, have a picnic.
It's crazy. I mean, you can do stuff. So, and this is another benefit about just kind of how when you're shifting your ideas about economy and stuff like this. Like, I live in Oslo. I don't own a car. That saves me a lot of money.
Yeah.
I ride my bike because it's a really nice city to ride your bike in, or occasionally take the public transportation, which is like not the cheapest in the world, but it's not the most expensive either. And it's just so many ways to get around. If you go out on a daily basis, you see people getting around in all kinds of ways. You see people going on when a lot of tourists come to visit, and I have them on my tours, they say, wow, it's so quiet here in Oslo. Where are all the people? Where are all the cars? All this kind of stuff. And it's like, well, we have some cars, but we also have scooters, and people ride bikes, and people walk, and people take the bus, and people take the train, and you can't even see the train because it's under the ground because they don't want it to cause pollution overground. So it's this diversity in mobility here in Oslo, but also a lot around Europe, I would say, and other kind of countries, maybe South Korea, places that have a lot of really big infrastructure for public transportation, where there's this priority set to get people around in diverse ways. It's healthy in a lot of ways, get people moving, all this kind of stuff. It's incredible. It's really, I would like to see that in America too.
Yeah, and it's great on a personal level too, like you riding your bike somewhere versus taking the T-bane versus taking the bus are different experiences as well, which is kind of fun. I love that. Mobility, number 2. We're whittling it down, man. I got my number 2 here.
What's your
Can
number
I go
2?
with it?
Give it up.
Getting to become part of another culture. Now, it sounds like I've been America bashing. I'm not. I love America. I love road tripping in America. It's probably might be my favorite travel thing to do. Of all the countries I've been in, all the different ways I've traveled and all that, something about road tripping in America is it's just something I did for so long that it's like this forever special
road.
Yeah, it's this forever part of my heart that I can never let go of. Like I love it. So I got mad love for America and all things American, I guess. I know I say all things, but that's where I'm from. So it's a part of who I am. And that's like anybody can say where they grew up. If they spent a lot of time in a place where they grew up in one country, it's going to be a part of who you are, and you hopefully appreciate those parts and the things you learned from that experience. But it's a real treat for me being married to a Norwegian and living in Norway. You don't have to be married to a Norwegian. You don't have to be married to anybody to to have this experience. If you stay in a place long enough, you get to like adopt another culture into your life in some way, beyond just the sort of, when you're traveling, you can do that for little periods of time. But when you're kind of living traditions over and over, like I have been for years now, you're not just like a traveler experiencing a tradition for a period of time. It's now become your own family tradition. So your own traditions are, for me, like with my family here, a lot of my traditions are now Norwegian traditions. And instead of at the beginning where I felt like I was just like an outsider experiencing that, which was also exciting and cool because you get that travel excitement, right? Like when you come in somewhere and you're like, oh my God, I'm in Germany and this woman's bringing me like, she has an arm full of giant beers and like, like people are singing the Oompa. It's like, wow, I'm having this experience, and you're like kind of taking it as this experience as a traveler. I hope I'm explaining this properly, but when you're living that over years, I'm more in it. I'm not like an observer. I'm more like a part of it, So I feel like I've got this blessing of having a whole new culture as a part of my life. And now my kids are half Norwegian, half American. I don't feel as much like a traveler experiencing these things. I feel more like, I'm not ever going to be a Norwegian, but I feel like connected to the Norwegian culture in a different way. And it's a really cool thing to experience another culture and have that as a part of my life on that level.
You've gone native.
Have I?
Yeah,
I'm wearing clothes.
No, but I mean, yeah, it's what happens. That's what they used to say. Anthropologist goes somewhere and then ends up staying there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I think we're all studiers of the travel arts, so in many ways, we've gone native. So
gone native. Wow. I mean, in some ways, I'll never be fully native, of course, but it's a feeling. It's like a feeling that I can't explain. It feels more a part of my family, and it is a part of my family.
Well, it is, yeah. I mean, and I think that's a unique experience in itself, is to actually have part of your family. I mean, I don't quite know that experience because I don't have kids, but I mean, you actually have kids that are like part of two sides of DNA of the different cultures.
This is like important because I want them to I want those backgrounds to be part of who they are. I want the American side too. So
yeah, no, that's it's interesting. You experience it on different levels too. I mean, in general, I'd like to not really think I like the act of traveling, but even when I'm traveling places, and I'm using quotation marks right now, I don't like being a tourist all the time anyways. I mean? I like that. Like my favorite thing to do when I go to a new place is either go for a jog. First day, don't look at the map, just go for a jog. Check out the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I need to get better at my microphone skills.
No, your skills are good. You're just your proximity and mobility. With
I need
your microphone.
I need like a boom mic. I'm getting too expressive with my hand gestures. First time on the podcast. Where were we now? But this idea of, but when you're traveling, I think it's possible, so just like people can relate a little bit maybe to what you're saying. And I think I know what you're saying. It is also possible to kind of get that feeling in shorter spurts, but it just depends on how you travel, because my favorite thing to do is like go for a run in like a neighborhood where I've never been before and just see what happens, know, or another little way you can get that even if you're not living somewhere, but instead of always going for the
sites,
the Cliffs Notes, the Lonely Planet sites, or nothing wrong with Lonely Planet or any of these things, but we get different topic. But sit in a cafe, like a local cafe, and just see what's going on. Go to the local bar. You know what I mean? See what's happening in there. Talk to the people. And you can get really quickly deeper insight into the essence of the culture rather than just skimming on the surface.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think yeah, like you get to become a part of the culture in as a traveler. So that's one of the big perks of traveling, of course. So yeah, for me, having this on this list is probably maybe now that I think about it, it's maybe more of a could be more tied to the fact that I have a family here and that they're both part of that. And
it makes sense. I mean, I can relate to, and like, I don't know. For me, I'm a bit more ambivalent about my position here in, say, like Norwegian local culture.
Right.
I feel a bit on the fence about it. But parts of me, like immediately when I came here, felt some like lost home that I
really?
never. Yeah. That's what first caught me, was like what we were talking about in the beginning, and we can get into it a little bit more. Is immediately coming here, when I first lived here, I lived right next to the forest and I could ride the train. I was like, this is like some imaginary world that I made up in my head, but it actually exists.
Right.
You know? And it's weird, and it actually has nothing I mean, maybe a lot of that design is influenced by the culture, but this place just kind of existed, and I like immediately could relate to it. There's a lot of things in Norwegian culture I can't relate to, but there's something, and then there's certain things you adopt. What do you think? I'm just curious. Do you have anything? I'm asking this because I have one. Do you have anything that you really like, that you've like adopted that you didn't have before?
That's Norwegian?
Or Norwegian, or just like in general from different cultures, basic stuff, like surprising things? Basic surprising
like specific things, or just sort of more like mindset or...
I can give you my. You want me to start? Okay,
yeah.
My example would be, and this might sound really funny, but I don't feel like I really grew up with the whole idea of taking your shoes off when you go into someone's house.
Oh yeah.
Did you grow up with that? I don't know.
No, but I think it makes a lot of sense, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, like I mean, when I lived in Asia and like South Korea, it was like, it doesn't matter where you go to a restaurant, you take your shoes off.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
And I've adopted that, and I do that like everywhere.
Yeah.
I can now.
You have to do it here, right? I mean, that's part of Norwegian culture.
You would be like a heathen.
Got to take your shoes off. I mean, I feel bad when I have to like walk back in the house to get my keys because I forgot them or something. Like, oh, sorry, honey, to walk through with my shoes. No, that's a really good one, and like a very practical one.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Right?
It's like something you wouldn't think. It's something it's not so sexy or exciting, but it's
yeah.
funny.
No, that's true. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I love is, and then we can move on to our top ones. My top one is like so boring, it's hilarious.
Mine too, but
is it?
Oh, I don't know. For me, it's exciting, but probably for maybe it'll be interesting for some people. Stay tuned.
Okay. Stay tuned. We're almost wrapping up. I love the appreciation for the countryside and nature here. We've already talked about that a lot, but there's something about. I feel like Norway is, and maybe this is me just kind of idealizing it, but I really have this experience. My wife being from Utpolanda, which is like out in the countryside. She really grew up in a rural area. And when we go up there, I understand that culture because I've spent a lot of time in it. I didn't grow up there, but I can understand a lot more about her, where she's from, but also about life in rural Norway. And I think life in rural Norway also spills into the cities because a lot of people that settle in the cities come from rural Norway. And even if they don't, I feel like it just bleeds in because Norway is such a small country. What I'm getting at is there seems like to be a real appreciation for like simple things in a way, like going and picking blueberries is like an activity, or yeah, just being outside and kind of doing simple things. And it's really attractive to me because coming from like kind of the Western mindset and always like go, I've always appreciated nature and wanted to have that as more. I made it a point to have that as part of my travels in my life. But I think Norway has helped me slow down even more. And maybe that's also having kids too, is kind of like just, stop and look at the ducks. Like just kind of, I don't know. So there's something here that I think there's this appreciation for these sort of going to a cafe and sitting down and having a coffee and just like being, like you said, just being. I don't know what it is. It's a vibe.
That's really cool that you brought that up because I think that is such an essential part of living here in Norway. Is just appreciating the nature, and it's weird because I feel like here you can be a little. It's like we said from me. It's a little like less stress vibe.
Yeah.
At least on like the surface level, I would say. Is that
kind of leads to my number one.
Oh yeah,
a little bit.
What you got?
Well, you want me to take it first?
No.
I'll take it. All right.
Yeah, go for it.
This is my number one. Top 5 things I love about living abroad. So this is going to be so boring to most of you, but also when you talk about the less stress vibe, this ties in. And this is more to my particular situation because I have kids and a family and everything. The social system here.
Oh, yeah.
Having kids and knowing, like, when we had some complications with, like, my son's birth, he also was born with a club foot, which is like a common birth defect, but something that needs to be treated over a period of 5 years. Like, all these things that kind of can happen, all these things that happen to people in their lives. Like, eventually everybody knows somebody that's had cancer, or everybody's ended up in the hospital at some point or whatever. Just having the ability to, like, do the work I love, focus on that, and not have to worry about if I'm going to be able to afford my health insurance bill every month. Like, if I move back to the States right now with as a family with 2 kids, I mean, I'm probably paying at least $1,000 a month right off the top just to get basic health care with probably a big deductible and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, very practical thing for my situation, but I've grown to love this, not because it's perfect, but because what I've noticed from conversations with others and even conversations on some people I've had on the podcast from the Nordic perspective and existing in it for my own life and my own situation and seeing the people around me and how it affects them, I really think this idea of that, like, having a good system like this in terms of healthcare really creates more freedom for people to do the things they want to do, because you're removing a big, not only fear, like a mindset fear, but also like a practical barrier to people just like maybe doing jobs that they love, not because they just need the insurance or whatever. You know, when you know you're not one thing away from losing everything. When you get hurt and you don't have to, like, your first question that you ask yourself isn't, oh my gosh, how much is this going to cost? You know, like, you should not like have somebody you love get hurt or you get hurt, and then the first thing that runs through your mind is,
oh my God, how am I going to pay for this?
Like, even when we were traveling in the States, it was like, my kids got sick, and then they were doing these tests, and they're like, if this doesn't work out, you're gonna have to go to the ER.
Yikes.
So I'm like, all right, we're gonna have to call the insurance company, because we can't just, like, you can't just go to the ER, because that could be $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
That's effed up.
Totally.
Sorry, it is. So anyway,
100%.
that's not, I mean, so I just bring that up because there's the practical side of that. That sounds boring. But there's this whole other side, how that affects the society.
Oh, absolutely.
And the people within it. I guess my heart aches for, like, my home country to get some of this stuff together, and for the people that struggle with this as, like, a real struggle in their lives, and they medical bills and things like that. I mean, we're, like, one of the richest countries in the world. Can't we figure this out? Sorry, this isn't a political podcast, so I'm not going to, like...
Let's go for it.
I'm not going to rant on that, but I can say it's a huge difference in quality of life in terms of having that freedom and flexibility and not having to worry about
and there you go, throwing that worldly perspective in there,
I guess. So anyway, that's my number one, for better or worse.
Well, this is going to be a really boring end to this list, probably, because I have...
We should have reordered this.
I have the same thing.
Do you?
Yeah. I have the same... Well, my number... I did... Healthcare. Yeah, that was the top one, healthcare. Yeah. But I can expand on that just a little bit.
Yeah, please do.
Dude, 100% healthcare. I mean, what's more important than your health?
Right.
I don't single, married, elderly, young, babies, whatever. Like,
and I know this is very much like, sorry to interrupt, because I want to hear what you have to say, but this is our top 5 things we love about living abroad. Now, this particular one for us is very specific to where we are.
Yeah, I even have that written in my notes. That says healthcare. Very specific due to where I'm from and where I currently live,
okay,
but healthcare.
Yeah, but healthcare. So go on, please.
Yeah, I mean, now, how about this? What about this idea? okay, and I'm talking to all the people out there. Okay, especially if you're in America or one of the other 3 countries in the world that don't have healthcare. But I think United States, sorry, is we need to get it together because before now, how is this for a vibe? When I moved here, okay, I would tell this to people on the phone. I'm not just making this up in like post reflection now. I would call people and I'd say, yeah, the vibe is just different here in Norway because you can tell that people aren't worried so much about like healthcare.
Yeah.
And like
it's an anxiety
money, the anxiety is just not there.
Yeah.
And you know what? At that point in time, I was not in the Norwegian healthcare system or the social system because there's other benefits that we haven't mentioned so much about the social welfare system here. But even just existing, even though I'm sitting there, don't have health insurance here, not in the system, but just existing in a place where everybody is generally taken care of made me feel better.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't a part of it yet. It took a couple of years for me to get into the system here, just from different visa regulations and stuff like that. Yeah. But just being there, not even being a part of it, made me happy. I would tell people it makes me happy just to be in a place where I know people are being taken care of. Well, yeah. I mean, and I mean, this goes a bit more into, of course, into perspective and reflection and all these kinds of things. But, you know, you become, I don't know, I feel like I've become increasingly more empathetic in my old age or whatever, but maybe it has something to do with traveling and living in different places. But that just made me feel better. Yeah. Like, I don't have kids, but it makes me happy to know that if you do have kids, you can send them away to kindergarten from ages 1 to 5, and that gives parents the ability to live their lives too. Yeah. And like and go to work and stuff. I mean, of course, you have a choice. You can of course decide not to do that.
Yeah, those types of things are subsidized, I think 86%.
Yeah.
So it's very affordable. Daycare. It's not just the healthcare. It's the, like, for me, daycare. All this stuff ties in that you're mentioning. Yeah.
Dude, just a short aside about healthcare, since I'm explaining it. I broke my arm in United States, and I was not able to get it fixed there because I didn't have health insurance. I was just visiting, and I literally went to like a what's it called? Emergency care. He's one of these little shops in the mall.
Right, yeah.
Emergency medic, not the emergency
That's where we had
room.
to go with my kids when we were there. It's urgent care.
Urgent care. I went to an urgent care, and they were like, they gave me, it cost like $175. They gave me a sling, and they said, it should be okay.
It was broken.
It was broken, yeah. I luckily, because of some people I know, a couple weeks later got an appointment with a doctor while I was still visiting there, and they said, well, looks like you broke it, but it's already started to heal. So we can't really do anything about it. You might want to wait until you like go back to Norway or something. So I came back to Norway and I went to the emergency room. This is like months later now. I went to the emergency room and they were like, yeah, you broke your elbow, it healed, and now you need surgery. We're going to give you some x-rays. And then I got some x-rays that said, oh yeah, you need to come back tomorrow to get an MRI. This is at the emergency room. Yeah. That you need to come back tomorrow to get an MRI. Set me up with an MRI. No waiting. Like, you know, we always hear on the news about, we got to wait in line. No, this was immediate that day. And then the next day got an MRI. And then immediately they scheduled me for an appointment to come get my elbow surgery. I had to wait a couple weeks to get the surgery, but it was reasonable. It wasn't like an emergency.
You'd already waited months.
I already waited months, thanks to my fabulous American healthcare system, which doesn't exist. And they took care of me. Literally, I had to get 2 surgeries, actually, to fix it because it's this like sawing, and I won't go into the gory details. Yeah. But nonetheless, I had to get 2 surgeries. Wow. A couple x-rays, MRI, 2 surgeries, a sandwich, and a coffee, and it cost me like $100. And you want to talk about a pre-existing condition? I mean,
everybody can say, "Oh, you pay so much in taxes," but like, I actually don't pay really that much more in taxes. Like my company does more than my company would in the States, but personally, it's roughly on par. But like you said, just existing here, like you got for a meal, at least you know it's going towards taking care of other people.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because now it's kind of tapering down the benefits and stuff. But now I'm kind of wishing that I made instead of the foreigner card one, I would have liked to have added one in about, because that was kind of a funny one. But
yeah,
I would have liked to add one in about affordability, just to add on to the end of healthcare.
Well, I think that ties in with this. Yeah,
like all this talk about the Norway or the Nordic countries or Europe or democratic socialist countries and all this kind of stuff being like so overpriced and all these taxes, blah, blah, blah. It's like, number one, you get a lot for your money. Number two, they just tax kind of differently. So you kind of have to just change your perspective on how you buy things and like what you buy and why you buy and what you're paying for and where the money's going, you know, because you get so much for your taxes. And when you look at your taxes, what you might pay in the United States, it's probably not that much different.
Yeah.
And also when you think about all the money you save by like not driving everywhere.
Well, if you were, like you said, the perspective thing, if you have to pay for your own health care, you know, as a self-employed person, you're just the money. You could say that that's tax money here, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it depends on how you look at it, but that's extra money. You're saying, oh, well, maybe I pay a little less in taxes, but you're also paying this much in healthcare, this much in daycare, this much in this, that, and the other.
Mm-hmm.
So all that adds up that you're, in the end, maybe you're paying more. Everybody's situation is different.
Yeah. But I think some of the key things about this is also just why the healthcare probably is at the top of both of our lists is I think it comes a lot back to what you said too. Like, you're not bound to an employer, you know, which you're not bound to an employer. So you like can just like kind of have freedom, like you said, like for you to do something like this podcast or something like that. You know, it's like, that's amazing. I mean, of course, a lot of people do it in the United States too, or in like other places, but it's really amazing. Let's just say this. Most governments suck for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of corruption everywhere, but at least have one that works for the people. You know what I mean? And I feel like this one is doing quite a good job of working through the people via the social welfare system.
Yeah, and like we said before, it's not just because the personal situations that we talked about here today,
mm-hmm.
but it contributes to the relaxed vibe
mm-hmm.
of the country and the place you exist. And when you visit countries or live abroad in countries where, listen, no country's perfect.
Mm-mm.
Everybody has their faults and things like that. But
mm-hmm.
again, we don't want to keep this going too much in the political direction. But it's like, it just frustrates me so much because what's the point of having all this money, all this tax money and things in the States if they're not going to take care of people? And like when I always have to preface it by saying, well, everybody's got their own individual situation, because in the States it often ends up being like that. Everybody's sort of trying to fight for and figure out their own situation. But if we could get just a baseline, hey, everybody's taken care of on this health thing. If you just walked up to everybody and said, hey guys, tomorrow you don't have to worry about healthcare anymore. We got you covered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not going to be perfect, but like, who would like? I don't understand how you can say no to that. Like, well, I want to pay more. I want to keep paying.
Yeah.
You know, like,
I don't think,
it just seems like a no-brainer.
Well,
it just creates a much more relaxed situation for everybody where they know if stuff goes down, they're going to be taken care of.
Yeah, and it goes kind of back to this whole perspective thing. I think that, and this is not a perspective necessarily from traveling, but a cultural perspective.
Yeah.
Because somehow the different cultures see these things differently. Here in this culture and a lot of other European cultures or developed countries, quote unquote, they value the collective good as a very important, maybe the most important natural resource, which is why people and the agency and the social capital and the ability to be educated and the ability to be healthy and continue on making this country work, you know? And I think that's what we see happening here. Whereas the other side of that perspective is, oh, I don't want to pay for other people, and I have my own individual culture.
Yeah, right.
That's something like that. I don't know. But anyways, yeah. We are going off.
We rocked this.
We're
all right.
Rocking it.
Well, we should recap. Let's see.
Recap.
We're going to go through, this was our top 5 things we love about living abroad. My number 5 was food. Your number 5 was the foreigner card. Or we could also call it anonymity in a way.
Yeah, anonymity is a nice
but it's
one.
also something, like you said, it can be an advantage or disadvantage depending on, we had that whole discussion.
Yeah.
Number 4, we both said, in a nutshell, perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, we both said proximity, essentially, which is like proximity to new places to explore, new cultures to check out, all that good stuff, because we love to travel. That's why we're here, or one of the reasons. Number 2, mobility is what you said, which I love. Easy to get around, public transportation, all that good stuff. I could definitely second that. My number 2 is getting to be a part of another culture, getting to like adopt another culture as mine. It's kind of cool. Honorary, consider myself an honorary Norwegian, even though they don't. You know, there's this whole thing like being a friend of Norway. Like Bruce Springsteen's a friend of Norway.
Oh yeah, I wonder about Bruce Springsteen.
It's like an official status or something, but not really official. I don't know how you become a friend of Norway, but hey, if anybody's listening, one of my missions is to become a friend of Norway.
Don't you think he has some like secret kids over here or something?
Because he loves Norway so much?
I mean, he's here like 3 or 4 times a year. He has his own taxi driver and a gym membership.
Really?
Yeah.
Bruce, hey,
That's
listen,
the rumor.
man, if you're
Sorry,
out there,
Bruce.
if you're
I don't
listening, we would love to get you on the podcast. Come on over. Want to talk to you about your time.
Come dispel my rumors that I just spread.
In Norway. And
Sorry,
number 1
Bruce.
for both of us, we're saying, you know, the social system, part of that, a huge part of that, healthcare. Also for me, the daycare and some of the other things you can get support with your tax dollars. So
Love it.
Botik, my man.
Mr. Jason.
Our first podcast together. We got to high five it out when we do that in person. It's always a nice thing to do.
Thanks
We
for
drank
having
about
me.
16 cups of coffee and had as much sugar as I think we have in the house. So I know I got to pee.
Time to do it.
And
Thanks for having me on. This was great.
We'll have you back again for another episode. Going to be our top 5 most challenging things about living abroad. Most challenging things. So
It can be challenging.
we'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you later.
Cheers. There you have it. Thanks to my buddy Botik Quest for stopping by the podcast and also letting me come to his open mic and completely bomb, which, as you heard in the interview, I guess I'm prepared to do again. I don't know. I'm a glutton for punishment. I think it's fun to talk about these things because, hey, life is short. Put yourself out there. You know, do something that scares the crap out of you. And when you do that, every time I've done that, I'm sure you know every time you've done that, you come out a better person for it. So if you're thinking about doing something that scares the crap out of you, but you keep putting it off, go do that thing that scares the crap out of you. You'll probably hate it when it's happening. But in the end, lessons will be learned. And yeah, who knows how it will change you. But there's a little motivational send-off, I guess, for you. I wanted to give a couple shout-outs before I let you go to some fine folks in this community, which, by the way, if you are new to the Zero to Travel podcast listening community, welcome. Feel free to subscribe. We have episodes packed with travel tips, advice, strategies from experts, great stories, all kinds of awesome stuff. You can subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Feel free to leave a review if you have been subscribed for a while and you haven't done that and you have anything nice to say. Those are always more than welcome. And of course, you can get in touch with me, jason@zerototravel.com. Sign up for the email list over at Zero to Travel if you want to get some stuff off the podcast, because got all kinds of stuff happening that doesn't happen on the podcast, and you can stay in the loop and join the community there. And thank you so much for being a member of this listening community. And I really appreciate that you're here. Thank you. You can be doing a lot. You hung out with me today, and I appreciate that. So before I let you go, shall I leave you with a quote? I like to do that. Let me pull one out of my drawer here. I've got a whole drawer full of quotes, if you would believe that, from a little Zen calendar I have. Let's see what I got here. Did I get lucky here? All right. Thich Nhat Hanh. Here it is. Breathing is the bridge between body and mind. Breathing is the bridge between body and mind. There. Random quote pulled out from my drawer. So if you're feeling stressed today, take a second and breathe. Bridge that body and mind. You'll feel good. I needed that. I needed that quote. Thank you, Thich Nhat Hanh. Thank you, my friend, for listening to this show. And I'll see you next time. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.